Wildlife crime. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's one of the major causes of biodiversity loss that is driving some species to the brink of extinction. My name's Azza, and I'm the director of WCN's Pangolin Crisis Fund. I'm a former diplomat, and I'm a counter-wildlife trafficking specialist. I've worked on wildlife crime issues right across Africa and Asia, including training rangers in how to use intelligence to tackle wildlife trafficking networks, and now funding the best organizations so that they can counter this illegal trade. The wildlife trade may seem far away from many of our daily lives, but in actual fact, it has affected every single one of us. And it affected us in more ways and more deeply than we could ever have imagined. COVID-19 came from the wildlife trade, and although we don't know exactly which species transmitted the virus, we do know that it's a zoonotic disease that was spread from hunting, eating, and trading wildlife. When we think about wildlife crime, we often think about elephants. Killed in their thousands over the past decade for their ivory, being carved into ornaments or into jewelry. Or we might think about pangolins, today the world's most heavily trafficked mammal, on the edge of extinction, killed in their hundreds of thousands for their meat and for their scales, which are used in traditional Chinese medicines. As you can see from this multi-ton seizure of ivory and pangolin scales from 2019, wildlife crime is big business. In fact, it's estimated to be worth $7 to $23 billion every year across all species. But today we're going to learn that wildlife crime isn't just about species like elephants and rhinos or even pangolins. In fact, hundreds of different species are traded for their skins, for their meat, for their scales, for their claws, for their horns, and for the illegal pet trade. Many of these traffickers are serious, organized criminals. They don't just trade in wildlife. In some cases, there are links to guns and to drugs, to human smuggling, and even to the trade in human body parts. But who are these wildlife traffickers, and how do these networks operate? Well, I'm going to unpack this for you. So let's do a deep dive into a hypothetical trafficking network. Most poachers hunt multiple species. So pangolin poachers may use dogs and snares and guns to hunt any kind of bushmeat, but they may also be the same people that hunt live animals for the pet trade, like chimpanzees and parrots. They may even be opportunistic elephant poachers. In fact, at grassroots level, many different people can be involved in hunting wildlife as the first link in the chain. So they could be a well-organized rhino poaching gang, using high-caliber weapons, like we've seen in southern and eastern Africa. Or they could be a commercial bushmeat hunting team, which is hunting tons of wildlife for high-end restaurants. And they're using snares, thousands upon thousands of snares, which is emptying entire protected areas because snares are indiscriminate in which animals they catch. But they could just be a family who's trying to feed themselves and who doesn't have any alternative sources of income. In fact, when it comes to pangolins and other small animals, even children can be the hunters. But regardless of who the hunters are, we see the same sorts of patterns at the tops of the network. So we see large sums of money being made by middlemen and by senior traffickers. And we also see corruption in different forms. So we may see police officers who are selling their own ammunition to poachers for them to hunt animals. Or we may see high-level traffickers using their own businesses to launder wildlife. We may see other corrupt government officials who are letting vehicles move through checkpoints without being stopped, without paperwork being checked. In fact, we may even see diplomats using their diplomatic channels to smuggle wildlife across borders. The key point is, traffickers trade in wildlife because they want to make money, and they don't care what species they trade in. Wildlife crime is often seen as low risk, high reward, and we need to shift this balance. And we're doing this by funding some incredible organizations like the Environmental Investigation Agency and like Langland Conservation and the Eagle Network, who investigate high-level traffickers and expose corruption. As well as African nature investors and the End Wildlife Crime Initiative, who work with governments to change legislation on critical laws. And this can shift the balance away from wildlife traffickers. And of course, we also need to address demand, which is the ultimate driver. And by doing this, we're helping pangolins and so many more other species that are hunted and traded through the same criminal networks. At a global level, we need to tackle wildlife trafficking and make structural change, but we also need people who are working on the ground with the would-be hunters. So now we're going to hear from 3 fantastic partners of WCN: Rwanda Wildlife Conservation Association, Macaw Recovery Network, and Proyecto Tití. And we're going to hear how they are tackling the illegal wildlife trade at grassroots level, and how this, working with poachers and the other work they're doing, is helping to save the species that they work on. So first up, we have Olivier and Deo from the Rwanda Wildlife Conservation Association.
All right. My name is Olivier Nsengimana.
My name is Deo Ruhagaze.
We are going to talk to you about the illegal pet trade in gray-crowned cranes. But first, let Deo tell you the story of Emmanuel.
I'm going to tell you the story of my colleague Emmanuel. Emmanuel said, I started the hunting and the poaching at the 7 years. At that time, I was with my colleague and my friends who were killing all sorts of antelope, killing the birds just for the meat of our family. I was a very famous poacher in that time, but no one could be able to catch me because I was having so many tricks to run away.
Now, I would like you to imagine that you are a father of 4 children. You have a wife. Your children have not eaten for days. You live nearby this marshland. You've seen a tall bird. And your neighbors told you that rich people in the city can pay a lot of money to have one of those birds. It sounds strange to you, but if you could catch one, just one, you could earn a lot of money, even a lot more than you can earn in a month. You could buy a lot of food for your kids. You could buy school notebooks that they need to go back to school. They have been sent away because they don't have notebooks. So in this man's situation, what would you do? I want you to think. So, illegal pet trade or illegal wildlife trade is illegal. It's not allowed. But when we address it, it's always important to think why it happens in the first time and in which context it happens. The tall birds I'm talking about are gray-crowned cranes. They are tall, beautiful birds with a crown. The bird with a crown. They are tall as 1.2 meters. They can even reach up to 2 meters with their wingspan. They are so beautiful. But unfortunately, due to illegal pet trade and habitat loss, we've lost about 80% of the whole population of gray-crowned cranes in their country range. In 2014, when we started our work, it was estimated that we had only 300 remaining in the wild in Rwanda. So what was happening is this. The gray-crowned cranes is seen as a symbol of wealth and longevity. So many people love them. They relate to them, and they want to have them as pets. So even though it's not allowed to get them from their habitat and sell them, even though it's illegal, but a lot has happened. And I would like to ask you again, if you were the father, you knew it's illegal, and you can hear your kids crying in the night, they need food, and would you still do it even if you knew it was illegal? Sure, if you went in the night, you could catch one. So this is what has been happening. Driven by lack of awareness and poverty, local communities have been poaching or catching cranes. You can see one crane here, it's on a rope. This is not normal for cranes. And they have been trying to find a buyer. And these people, when they bring them to sell them, the dealers, they bring them to captivity. And when they end in captivity, they are given the wrong food, they are stressed, malnourished. And you can see these birds here, they are fed of bread only. So many cranes, they died through the whole process. When communities are poaching, they use snares. They will use so many techniques just to get one. Sometimes you lose so many. And birds, they are so prone to stress. They can die if you transport them in a long distance under stress. They will die. So we've lost a huge number under these conditions. In addition, cranes are very particular, like we are. They need their own space, the wetland where they can build their nest. They need a very a secret place, like in the water, in the marshland, to build their nest. So a big number of cranes that end in captivity, they don't breed. So this has put a huge pressure on the whole population. This is the market chain. My friend Azza was talking about all sorts of trade, international trade, but you will be surprised that for the gray-crowned cranes, most of the cranes that were poached in our country was for the domestic market. So local communities would capture cranes and sell them to dealers. So these are the people who made a huge profit. So they would sell cranes up to $400, and they would sell to domestic market, but a few of cranes would go to the international market, going through our neighboring countries, either Tanzania, Burundi, DRC, all of those countries. So when we started this to think of what we can do, we wanted to reverse the decline in gray-crowned cranes. We wanted to end the trade. So we reached to the government. We started a lot of efforts to enforce the law. You'll be surprised that the gray-crowned cranes were under the same law as gorillas, other species. So we tried to work together, bring everyone together to say, let's tackle the illegal trade. The cranes are in danger. But more importantly, we went on radios and television. We told everyone, hey, the cranes that we love, those cranes that we want for our future generation to see, they are in danger. We could lose them. And we opened our phone numbers to the whole country, and we said, if you would love to give them a second chance, please call us. So the response was so overwhelming. At first, I thought no one would give me their cranes. You can imagine someone rich with a status, how would they give animal they have in their garden. But it was so overwhelming when the people called us, say, hey, we didn't know it was bad. We didn't know it was illegal, but come and take them. So over the last 7 years, we worked hard to remove all gray-crowned cranes. So we have removed all cranes from captivity, and none of the cranes is ending in captivity in Rwanda anymore. People understand that it's legal, it's not good. Thank you. But one thing we quickly realized was this. You saw on the chain I showed you, it all starts at the community level. And it was so easy for the same cranes we have taken back to the wild to find us back in the city. Sometimes I even thought people might be fast, like from the time I come from introducing them in the park, they might find me in the city. Or could shift, the international market would grow more. People would find a market in other countries. So we really need to work at the source, at the community level. Like the story of Emmanuel that Deo told you, we know that communities are poaching because they need a livelihood, they need money, but also they are not aware. But maybe if we could combine like raising awareness and some income-generating projects, maybe we can make a difference. Deo?
Let me continue the second part of the story. One day, I was coming for poaching, Emmanuel said, and then I meet with the Deo and the Joyeuse RWCA staff. I was with my colleague, poachers, but they ran away. But me, I stayed to talk. At that time, I was having the bushmeat into my house. I was also having all the poaching equipment into my house, but they didn't know that I have them. We talked different scenario of conservation. They taught me how to conserve the nature and the importance of protecting wildlife. At that time, I was not really convinced because I asked them, are you going to feed my family?
So that was the question of Emmanuel. Are you going to give me food to feed my family? So when we started working with communities, we were thinking, how can we get communities on board? You know, coming from the community, I know deep down, like there is the love. Like when I go out, I always sit together with people. They tell you stories. They tell you so many things. And you know, species like great-crowned cranes is known in Rwanda, is a totem. So many people relate to them. We try to dance like them. You know, many people always ask me, why do I love to dance? Because cranes dance. I love to dance. We try to relate to them. They mean a lot. So people, sometimes they do what they do because they don't have a choice or an alternative. So at RWCA, we've started to create a lot of opportunities. We've started with a group of marsh rangers, group of conservation champions, and these are community members that we go and recruit. We never get tired. We go and sit with people. We chat, and we never segregate. Whether you've been a poacher, whether you've been not a poacher, if you have the love for wildlife, we try to work with you. We give them a lot of training. We give them tools, and we equip them to stand in the right place, to the front line, to save the same wildlife that they will be endangering. This is a story of women. It's a women cooperative. It was one day during the COVID time. You know, we all suffered, but communities even suffered more. They lost most of their livelihood. And these women, they were so creative. They rushed to the marsh. It's a very important area where cranes breed. It's actually a place that has a quarter of the whole population in Rwanda. So they were going in this place and cutting the grass, making mud and selling. It's a great business, isn't it? So one day our ranger got them and he said, hey, let's chat. So he tried to understand why they are doing what they are doing. And what came out of the conversation was that they were looking for a livelihood. So after consultation and understanding the needs, what they are up to, we managed to come up with another idea. So these women, we helped them to start a cooperative and provide training in sewing, tailoring, and basic business skills. So now they have graduated and they are making a living from this new business, and they no longer have to go to the marsh to cut the grass, and they have committed to protecting gray-crowned cranes. So we have so many cooperatives. I can talk about so many examples. We create a lot of opportunities for part-time jobs, like full-time jobs. Like every year we provide like 1,000 like jobs in our restoration program. That's growing, restoring habitat for wildlife. But more importantly, we are growing a team everywhere. We started a very small team, but we are now a team of about 200 people in the whole country. And 90% of these people, they are community members who are there doing the work we should do. It gives me hope to see conservation champion like this one. You see, I would love to be the person in a photo. I really love it so much to be the person in a photo. But you see, my story, I'm a vet. I'm a conservationist. I like to be close to animals, but I can't be everywhere. We need more people. So this is what gives me hope. When we have people who train and they're able to send us the data, they're able to monitor and talk about these species in their neighborhood. It gives me hope to see a woman like Arivela to wake up. She jumps on her bike, she puts on her rain gear, and she has her binocular. She goes to monitor great-crowned cranes. It gives me hope to see Jean-Claude taking his boat to go and monitor a nesting site that he's seen to make sure these eggs are not taken, these chicks are not killed, they are able to fledge. It gives me hope to see Jacques, who's a conservation champion. Instead of calling us to come and rescue this poached chick, he's able to go and collect the chick, reunite it with the parents. This is the hope. And this, we cannot do this without bringing communities on board. It gives me hope to see Faustin. Instead of us going everywhere, like talking to communities, these people, we train them every year. We bring them together. We tell them about the laws. We tell them everything. And they go back and they say it. And I can sit at home, have a cup of tea. But this has been paying off. Over the last 8 years we've been working with cranes, we've tripled the population of great-crowned cranes in Rwanda. From 300 to 1,066 last year, this is a great achievement. But we cannot do it without really having communities on board. Let
me continue with Emmanuel's story. Emmanuel said that at RWCA has supporting us to create a cooperative. Also, RWCA has helped us. Sorry, my English. to rent some land for cultivating the vegetables and the watermelons. Now, Emmanuel's salary he's getting this monthly salary. Also, his life has been changed because of the salary that he's getting. Also, from the harvest that he's getting from the farm that they have with their cooperatives. So now, Emmanuel is the one who's teaching all the poachers and they transform them into animal protector. So now Emmanuel is thanking everyone in the RWCA and the partners for changing his life. Thank you.
Last year, This is when Emmanuel told us the story. When we brought the whole team together, we had like a night of stories. And he told us like everything he used to do. So this story has really touched us. And this is Emmanuel. He's using the same equipment, like small boat. He's using the same skills that he used to kill animals. He's now using them to protect the same animals. Emmanuel has helped us to approach 68 poachers. They are now united together in a cooperative. And instead of killing animals and selling them, they are now protecting animals. And this is really a great story. And we are so much committed to even equipping more people, to giving them, we want to buy them like some nice little kayaks, boats, so that they are able even to reach far beyond and give us even more information, protect the same animals. And this is how we can achieve the sustainability. But as we secure the community, we are thinking of the future. At RWCA, we are so much committed at inspiring a generation of future conservationists. We want young people to fall in love with wildlife. We want them to inspire them to take actions to save wildlife. And we cannot do it alone. We need all of you on board. Together, we are strong. We can achieve a lot. Please, help us to put more colors in the sky. Thank you.
Like the cranes, macaws are beautiful. They're also cute, charismatic, cuddly, and very intelligent. But this has caused us a problem because that has driven them into our homes as pets. And it's a global problem that affects many, many species. In this single photo, there are 8 species of parrot that are about to become pets. And they're kept in this moment in terrible conditions. And it's not unique. Parrots are traded in really horrific conditions, and many of them die. Now, the reason the scarlet macaw is so familiar to us is because it's been traded for centuries. This is a painting from the 1800s. It's 1820, so it's 200 years ago. And apparently, that was a time when scarlet macaws had particularly skinny faces. In Costa Rica, it's illegal to have wildlife as a pet. And that's been great for the scarlet macaw because you can't really hide one when you have it as a pet. They're very, very loud. But the historic trade in scarlet macaws led them to become locally extinct across many areas of the country. In Punta Islita, this was the case. And before our work in that area, the scarlet macaws had not been seen for 70 years. We now have a breeding center in Punta Islita where we have confiscated birds that are not suitable for release themselves. They've been confiscated from trade, and it's those birds that can have babies, and babies like these 2 beauties, and they are beautiful in case you weren't sure. And it's these babies that we can release back into the wild. This is E.T. that Madeline and Jerry named, and this is E.T. taking flight for the first time as a wild bird. This is a captive bred bird that's been restoring a population. It's going back and putting the birds back in the area. Excuse me. Now, it's very easy to release birds. You just open the cage. But when we have those birds breeding in the wild, that's when we think we've got success. And these are captive bred parents that have now taken on a wild nest and raised offspring of their own. And so this is re-establishing populations. Now, the local demand for scarlet macaws has declined thanks to this law, but that hasn't actually benefited all parrots.
The yellow-naped parrot, it's a species that has been facing a decline of its population due to wildlife trafficking. Studies have shown that most of the nests are robbed, and it means that there are not many chicks joining the wild population every year. For understanding better this situation, My colleague Brandon and I have been talking with people from communities and understand their motivations. In one of these conversations, we were able to talk with Patricia. Patricia owns a yellow-naped parrot. For her, it's not a big problem, since in her community, almost everyone owns a wild animal as pet. She knows that in Costa Rica, it's not allowed to have this kind of animal at home. But in her own words, she said, I keep this animal at my home because I really love animals. And I can understand why people say that they love these animals and want to have them at home. They are very charismatic and also easy to train. You see, it's easy to create a bond with the animal. The thing is that even the people love the animal, the conditions where they are kept are not the best. They are kept in very small cages with almost no social interaction, and also they are fed in an inadequate way. Actually, the authorities have found some of these birds with some addictions to coffee or chocolate, for example. In Macaw Recovery Network, we truly believe that we can make a difference in this topic, understanding people's attitudes and behaviors towards these animals. We want to inspire people and redirect that love that they say they are feeling for the birds in a way that they can conserve these birds in nature instead of having it in their homes. And that is great and it's important, but it's also crucial to work with other stakeholders like the police. Last March, we developed a training with police officers in Costa Rica. It was a very good experience, and it was the first time in my life that I was working with police officers. So at the beginning, I was a little bit concerned and a little bit nervous about it, but it was just great. They were open to understand the topic about the yellow-naped parrot. They had many questions about the pet trade. And at the end, we also were able to understand their side of the story. They need pretty much training, and also they don't have the equipment for doing their labor. So we really see in that area a way to continue working and contribute it to protect and conserve the yellow-naped parrot.
The great green macaw is critically endangered. There's estimated to be only around 1,000 left in the world. But interestingly here, the great green macaw is not threatened. Excuse me. The main driver threatening the great green macaw is not the collection of individuals for the pet trade. They were always considered a rather plain parrot, and by parrot standards, they are pretty boring. They're just plain green. But it's only the intelligent ones who know this, because when they fly, they reveal their colors, and they are actually beautiful birds. The thing with the great green macaw is that we've been monitoring nests for several years now, and we know that there's lots of productivity. But what we're not seeing is an increase in the population. So these two things don't really line up. And we're concerned that there's a problem with survival. That's something that's much, much harder to track. When the birds breed, they're using these nests in these big old trees, and we know exactly where to find them, as do poachers who poach any parrot, because that's what parrots do. But when we want to track the survival, we need to follow those birds after they leave the nest, and that's remarkably challenging. And actually right now, we only have a vague idea of where they go. And these are huge parrots, 3 feet long, that are loud and brightly colored, and yet they kind of disappear. So we've done a pilot study with tracking devices, and we're putting tracking devices on young birds now. This is a bird that's only 3 months, not even 3 months old, just before it's going to leave the nest. And it's fitted with a radio transmitter, in this case, a GPS transmitter. And this is going to help us learn about the survival of those birds. It's also going to help us understand how the birds use the habitat. The Caribbean lowland rainforest, which the great green macaw calls home, has been devastated. Since the 1950s, over half of it has been cut down to make way mostly for cattle pasture. And not only that, but in the remaining forest, there's been selective logging. And so hardwood trees that are really useful for construction and other uses have been taken out of that forest. And that's a problem because the great green macaw is really quite picky. And they have this great big beak because they eat the hard nuts that are found on these hardwood trees. So we're concerned about their survival, and we're wondering how they use the environment and what's affecting that. And we're hoping that the tracking is going to give us answers to these questions. And we suspect there's two possible causes. We think it could be that the parrots are having moments of the year when they're low on food, or it could be that the parrots themselves are food, and that could be local communities that are hunting them. So we really need to understand this dynamic. But it's very clear to us that we need to protect the forest, because that's an important resource for the birds, not only for nest sites, but for food. And we're very pleased to be able to say that we are protecting forests. We've secured funding thanks to generous supporters who have enabled us to protect this particular forest. And the need for that protection is ever clearer, because the neighbor has just recently fully cleared their land and put in pineapple plantations. And this is the boundary of the reserve that we're going to be creating. That, for me, is a pretty scary prospect, but it really inspires us to protect the forest. The farmland here was cleared legally, so this was perfectly acceptable. Nothing to our knowledge. I mean, I'm sure there was some extra things done, but pretty much this is a legal activity. This, however, is illegal activity. My 72-year-old dad came to visit me in Costa Rica, and you might think I would take him to the beach on a leisurely trip, especially as he's got 2 new knees. But instead we went to explore an area in the north of Costa Rica that's extremely remote, where the great green macaws are found. What we did find was a group of trucks, not just this one truck, but a group of trucks along with a bulldozer, and this was illegal logging going on. Luckily, I'm not too bad at playing a stupid gringo, and I can get away with that. But this is potentially a very dangerous situation, and it's something we've got to work out how we're going to tackle. It is very concerning for me. The rainforests are described as the lungs of the planet, and they are really going to play an important role in mitigating climate crisis. Those of you from California may be aware of some changes in the climate. You might have been noticed there's been cataclysmic fires, biblical downpours, or 50 feet of snow in the mountains. Protecting forests is really, really critical in helping us deal with these issues. We're also restoring forests, and that's an exciting thing that brings me hope.
And how do we restore forests? We truly believe that local communities are the ones who have to lead this process for conserving the great green macaw. Here in the picture, you can see the local tree nursery. That MRN have been supporting for almost a year and a half. This nursery, next one please, have been running and managing for these amazing ladies that are from the community. They are the ones who today are restoring the forest for the great green macaw. But they are not also working on today's forest. They are also working on tomorrow's forest. And that's why they are going to schools and they are teaching kids environmental education. They are protecting the forest today and they are restoring the forest today, but they are also thinking in the forest for tomorrow.
The way that wildlife illegal trade impacts each of these species is slightly different, but the basic principles affecting these birds are all the same, just as they are for our friends working with the cranes and our friends working with the cottontops. We're excited to be making an impact and working towards a better future for these birds and for the places they live. I'm going to hand over to Liz now.
All birds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Feathers, fluff, hair, fluffy stuff. The only problem these beautiful animals have is that they're just too cute. They're beautiful. They're intelligent. My cottontops are also intelligent, Sam. But yeah, it's an issue of being charismatic, being beautiful to our eyes, to human eyes. And that is their only sin. Cottontop tamarins are actually just 1-pound monkeys. They look big on these images, but they're just about the size of a squirrel. And very much like us humans, they live in family groups. Mom, dad, and the babies. And the babies play with each other and groom each other. And when they grow, they leave the home, like we do, leave our parents' home and find our own mate to make our own home. They are very territorial, just like we are. We don't welcome people that we don't want to our homes. And they have a very sophisticated communication system, just like we do. Basically, they have vocalizations, and you can hear some of that in the video. That's how they communicate with each other. But what makes them very, very special, especially to us Colombians, is the fact that they're only found in that little red dot of our huge planet, the country of Colombia. Not even in the whole country, but only in that little black strip that you see in the northern region of Colombia. That's it. They're not anywhere else. So that means they're very special, very unique. But unfortunately, that little strip of black area in the northern region of Colombia has been decades and decades used for cattle ranching, agriculture, mining, and urban development, which is common to many other parts of the world. So the habitat that used to cover all of that black area in the map of Colombia, it's down to less than 8%, and it's mostly little plots of forest spread around. And that is a big problem for cottontop tamarins. But besides deforestation, which is a huge problem, it's also what brings us together in this panel today on them being hunted for the pet trade. As you have seen with the talks of our colleagues in Olivier and Sam and Dio and Pamela, this is a very cruel activity. And statistics say that to successfully sell one animal on the pet trade, you basically have killed 10 of them. So only 10% kind of make it into a home that purchases these animals for a pet trade to keep them as pets. Also, they get abused horribly. Like in the case of the monkeys, they get drugged so that they look tame. And then when they wake up and they're very aggressive at your home, then you have a problem. Then they are not wanted, and then there's nothing they can do with it. And then a lot of irregular things happen around the pet trade. Now, just sharing some numbers with you or some metrics about the specific case of cottontop tamarins. The bibliography says that in the 60s and 70s, about 20 to 30,000 cottontops were exported from Colombia to the United States for biomedical research associated with colon cancer. A lot of those animals ended up in zoos and conservation centers around the planet. And that's why you probably have seen cottontops in your local zoo, because they're very popular in zoos. They come from those animals that were exported in the 60s and 70s. There's about 1,600 right now in zoos, under the care of zoos around the world. In the last population survey we developed 10 years ago, we estimated there's about 7,000 cottontop tamarins in the wild at the moment. So you can see from the 60s and 70s, if you exported 30,000 animals, and now we just have 7,000 left. You can see in the last 5 decades the huge decline on the species associated with both habitat loss and also the pet trade. And sadly, in a recent study we did by collecting information from the environmental authorities that have confiscation under their wings, about 500 cotton-top tamarins have been trafficked in Colombia for the local traffic over the past 5 years. Although these figures are really tricky because different from maybe the crowns and the cranes, I'm sorry, the crown cranes, and the macaws, reintroducing cotton-top tamarins into the wild, it's not an easy task. It's actually very complicated, demanding, and expensive. So environmental authorities don't want to confiscate the animals because then they don't have anything to do with them. They don't have rescue centers, so it becomes a huge problem. But at the same time, makes us wonder if all of the fuss we have done about cotton tops in our country makes them more valuable for the traffickers. So it's really complicated to understand the problem, but either, in these situations, you ask yourself, why would you want to have a little monkey tied to a leash? Why would you want to have it in a cage? Fed with the wrong food and treated in the wrong way, away from their family. And of course, the answer is what our colleagues have already explained today. It's a two-end way. On one side, people need food, people need to provide for their families. And on the other side, people have no idea what a cotton top is, or, it's a very beautiful monkey, and it's cool to have it as a different pet, not a dog or a cat, but something very different. And that motivates purchasing without knowing that it's endangered and it's only found in Colombia. So to us at Proyecto Tití, tackling those two ends at the same time is critical in order to be able to make a difference for the monkeys. And that is why we have developed over the years various programs that provide income alternatives, just as our colleagues explained today. In this case, Hirlesa with the little plush toys, that's actually about the size of the cotton top that she's holding in her hand. And she and her colleagues make these plush toys, and we go around telling people, you want to have a cotton top? Here, you can buy this little plush toy and help the ladies in the communities that live close to the forest make a decent and sustainable living for their families instead of having to create the damage for the cotton-top tamarins. But something else that we're offering as an opportunity is also hiring people from the local communities. And right now our staff is very close to 40 people. 80% of them are from the local communities, the people that are helping monitor the monkeys, people that are watering our trees that we're growing to bring back the forest, or the people that go to the schools to educate the children. They're mostly from the local communities. So providing permanent jobs with stability and benefits certainly makes a huge difference, and it goes straight to your pocket, but also to your heart. So that's what is needed for creating that kind of change in attitude and perception that we're looking for. But also, the work with the farmers has been critical for us to reduce the pet trade. Farmers that we sign conservation agreements with, and the conservation agreement is that you either save a little piece of forest in your land, and you allow us to come in and either protect that forest or replant it, and in turn you get benefits for your productivity. You get more trees, you get seeds, you get poultry, and all of that helps with the livelihood of you and your family. And then your commitment is not hunt, sell, keep, or harass the monkeys. That is the conservation agreement is based about, and of course not cutting the trees. And for all of them, the community members, it's a win-win situation, or it's a commitment on both ends. We provide certain benefits, and you provide a commitment to not hunt the animals in the wild. That's the side of the community that hunts and sells the animals. But on the other side, the people that buy the animals, because they don't know the tamarins, they don't know the species. So we have a very long-term and aggressive, I should say, education program that goes into all the schools around the forest, in the communities, around the forest that we're trying to protect. And this actually is a program that came out after COVID because the schools were closed for 2 years in Colombia. So we couldn't come and give our classroom activities. So we created a traveling puppet show. And then this traveling puppet show tells a story about the cotton top talking to a kid saying, I don't like, like the kid would say, oh, would you want to have a hot dog? And it's like, oh, I hate hot dogs. I love crickets, though. Ooh, I don't like crickets. And try to show the kids the difference in lifestyle and how important it is to be with your family. And of course, that happens around a lot of fun, games, contests, and dancing, of course, like the cranes, cotton tops. We have them dance like a cotton top as well. Just make it fun for the kids. But also, we bring the kids to the forest so that they can see the cotton tops in the wild and how beautiful they look in their native forest and not in a little cage or on a leash at home. Now, the big question is it working? Well, our data says it's working because the farmers, the artisans, the community members are staying true to their conservation agreements. In a recent evaluation, over 90% of the agreements are being stayed true. So people are really committing to that and staying away from any activity that harms the cotton tops and reducing their impact in the forest. That is a very positive result. And our evaluations pre and post of our education programs definitely show that the kids, it goes like from 20% to 99%, their knowledge, their attitudes, and their awareness that cotton tops need to stay in the forest. They're not happy with us. They're happy in their forest. And of course, all of this communication to a knowledge level of the children we're studying. The real challenge is the fact that, again, with cotton top tamarins, if we, our work needs to be preventive, because once the animals are out of the forest, it's very hard to bring them back into the forest again. So our efforts need to focus on avoiding people harassing, hunting, selling, and keeping cotton top tamarins as pets. And of course, it is working in the areas where we are, but it's a matter of scale. So we need to continue growing, and it's a change that doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and reaching out to more communities. Actually, the higher numbers that we saw on a recent study to where cotton tops are being trafficked show areas where we're not working yet within that blob. So that motivates us to grow and to reach much more places with this message and hopefully be able to prevent that cotton top tamarins continue in the pet trade. And of course, similar to the work of the Macaw Recovery Network, protecting the forest is key. Otherwise, when we achieve that cotton tops are not pulled out of the forest, then we're going to need a lot of forest for the cotton tops that are there so they can grow populations and they can expand their families as they grow. So our efforts are focusing in creating more forest, in collecting seeds and planting saplings, in converting pastures into forested areas, and that is the work we are focusing a lot of our efforts, just so when that time comes, we have enough habitat for the monkeys. And that it's, of course, been possible thanks to the support we've received from all of you to protect and secure a long-term future for the cutest monkey in the world. Thank you. Stay. Do we stay?
So, as you have heard, wildlife crime affects so many different species, but we've also heard some really inspiring stories about the great work that's going on. So we are so tight for time that we have time for one question, but I'm still going to invite everybody back on stage. And yeah, does the audience have a question?
One question.
One. Yes.
I donate to an organization here in the United States called Macaw Bird Rescue, and they're in charge of, people who have owned parrots here in the United States because people get into pet ownership of a parrot without realizing they can live 80 years or even more. So one of the things that struck me is that a lot of the demand for exotic animals comes from the United States. And I'm wondering how much support in general do you receive from US authorities to curtail this trade, because it's not rare to see wild bears, it's not uncommon to see tigers. We even make documentaries of people breeding tigers, and it seems like a lot of these organizations are making enormous progress, but what is happening is that as long as the demand here in the States happens, and without a similar educational effort done here, it's like a little bit of a David and Goliath situation going on.
Can I take that?
Yeah, for sure.
Wild populations of birds are generally protected by the Wild Bird Act, which stopped the importation of wild birds to the States. And that was a really important move. And Europe followed that. That was when Britain was part of Europe. Yeah, that was a mistake. Anyway. And so there was a follow-up in Europe that did the same thing. And so generally speaking, the trade of wild birds is not coming to the United States. Pet parrots, and I believe other pet animals in the States are bred in the States. That's its own microcosm and its own problem, because yes, parrots are often kept as pets, but dogs are great pets. Cats, maybe. But parrots, no. But there is still massive trade going into Asia and into Mexico, certainly of wild parrots and maybe of other species. So there are very different things going on. I don't know if that answers it.
Thank you. So we're completely out of time. But please, will everyone give a round of applause for our fantastic speakers. So we now have a break, a short break, until 4 o'clock. So please be back by then to hear about snow leopards. And thank you all very much.
Thank you.